Welcome to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. In a moment, we're going up to Hillsborough, New Jersey, to the home of Jack Ciattarelli, former Assemblyman, former gubernatorial candidate. Is he running for governor again? We'll ask him. Also, one of the key figures in the Bridgegate scandal learns his fate, and we are at the Newark Federal Courthouse. And the Katie Brennan hearings continue. We're in Trenton to find out if the investigative committee finally got some key answers. And do you remember this cow, the one that jumped out of a truck to avoid going to the slaughterhouse? She is still alive and may be the reason for a brand new law. And now we go to Hillsborough, New Jersey for our interview with Jack Ciattarelli. So it is an interesting question because I've read your quotes, and I read a quote a year ago, and the Associated Press asked you if you're running. You said, if you ask me today, I'm running.
I'm running.
So that day, you are running now?
Yeah, well, I'm not an official candidate. That requires filings and the like. That's what we have not done. But it's my intention to run for governor again.
It seems like it depends on what day they ask you. That's the way, that qualifier seemed to be, I may change my mind.
Maybe they were taken aback by the honest answer that, yes, I'm running for governor.
It is strange that you are answering it honestly, because I would think that some people could come after you and say, well, wait a second, you have to file now. You have to adhere to campaign finance rules now. Is there a real difference between saying I'm running and declaring officially?
If you declare officially, there's all kind of filings that are involved and the like, and it's just not the time in one respect. We've got important assembly races this year. These are the Murphy midterms. And I'm going to work very, very hard up and down the state to see that Republican Assembly candidates are reelected and a great many new candidates are elected for the first time. So there's a time and a place to make the official declaration. I would expect it from me sometime after this midterm election, but before 2020.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about politics before we get into issues and the current governor. Who do you expect to run against you?
Well, there's a number of people whose names continue to be mentioned. It would never surprise me if anyone who's held office at a very high level in New Jersey, run for high office at a high level in New Jersey, runs. So we'll see.
There's been some polls about the popularity of the current governor, and they've been low. And I would assume that that would entice a lot of people out there like Bob Hugin, maybe Kim Guadagno, maybe Sean Golden, a lot of people to get into this race. Do you expect a crowded field?
Well, I declare my candidacy unofficially, if you will, even before those poll numbers came out. I don't wish this governor to be unsuccessful because I'm for New Jersey, but I really have no faith in his policies and quite frankly, his ability to administrate state government, as recent revelations have shown.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the recent revelations. We'll move on from there. The School Development Authority, there was a investigative report put out in the newspaper in NJ.com that showed that the person who heads the authority, Lizette Delgado Polanco, was vice chair of the Democratic Party. So it seemed like it was a Democratic hire. A party hire, a political hire. And then she fired dozens of people and replaced them with 38 staff members who were making more than the people they replaced. And some of the people were given brand new positions, so she made the SDA even bigger. Phil Murphy's response to that seemed to be, we're going to look into it.
Really disappointing, the response. I mean, this is the kind of thing that infuriates you when you read it. It's just another black eye for the state of New Jersey. There's always some degree of patronage that goes with any new administration, but they've taken this to a whole egregious level. How many family members were put on the payroll by this new administrator for the School Development Authority? So the whole thing is very, very disappointing. And it kind of suggests something else about Murphy, which has concerned me from the very, very beginning. I continued to say throughout the gubernatorial campaign what the state needs is a hands-on chief executive officer. He seems to be everything but. This is not a rocky start or a rookie mistake. We're into year 2, and this is really embarrassing and infuriating for the taxpayers of New Jersey.
Right, you left out one, you added one thing that I left out that was important, that many of the hires were her family members. So it leads you to believe, who's overlooking that?
Nobody. Nobody's overlooking the appointments. I mean, if I was governor, here's what you would say to every one of your cabinet members and agency heads. I want to see the list of all the people you're recommending for hire in the first 12 months of this administration. I mean, this is really despicable what happened at this School Development Authority. You had people that had 16 years on the job that served both Republican and Democratic administrations that were let go. Now, they weren't civil service, so they could be let go, but they shouldn't have been let go. This seems to be a total disregard for what is right.
This is the second scandal in hiring at the SDA. The first one was when Al Alvarez, who was accused of rape, he's since been cleared, but he was accused of rape by Katie Brennan. He was hired, even though it seems like they knew what the allegations were against him. Hearings have been going on. We've had 8 hearings. We still don't know who hired Al Alvarez.
Who hired Al?
If you were in the Assembly, if you were on this committee, what would you do?
Right now, what I would do is this, considering all the people that have testified under oath that they didn't hire Al Alvarez, that leads us to conclude it's only one of 2 or 3 people. And I would be saying publicly, we know who you are. You went ahead and hired Al. Make them deny it, because I have a hard time believing all those that came before the investigative committee perjured themselves.
One of those 3 people is the governor?
Mm-hmm.
Would you call him?
I would. I would say publicly, you've hired Al, or your wife hired Al, or maybe Brendan Gill hired Al. Because I really have a hard time believing that any of those people that came before the investigative committee perjured themselves.
You wrote an op-ed for NJ.com. And in it, it seemed like you were outlining what you would do as governor if you were governor. And you raised 3 major points, and it all had to do with the economy. The first thing you said you would do is go after the pension fund, that is the thing weighing down the New Jersey economy more than anything else. Explain what you would do.
First thing I would do is focus on spending, with laser focus on pension, because that is what's driving all the tax revenue, the consumption of all the tax revenue that comes into Trenton.
So when you talk about, let me just clarify what you said. The first thing I would do is focus on spending. You would cut spending.
I would cut spending, and I would do this with every single one of my agency heads and cabinet members. Tell me every single function within this state government that can be contracted out, so we have less people on the payroll. Now, I'm not someone that celebrates putting people on the unemployment line, but I'm telling you that our state government with 65,000 people is bloated. And this example from the School Development Authority with all this nepotism and all these hires is a perfect example. How many people was this person allowed to just put on the payroll in jobs that paid way more than the people that were fired that had been there for 16 years? So we take a very, very close look at our personnel ranks. There's only one way to lower your pension and health care benefits: renegotiate the terms, or have less people on the payroll. I believe state government is bloated. We need to focus on spending.
It's interesting you bring up the SDA, because that was the first thing I thought of, that there are so many politicians that I spoke to, including the Senate President Steve Sweeney, where when I talk about cutting, he says, no, we've already cut. We've done that. We've cut to the bone. Now we have to look at other measures. The SDA seemed to prove that that's not the case.
It's not the case. And listen, even if you've cut to the bone with the way you currently do business, that doesn't mean there isn't a different way to do business. All of us know that contracting out is a viable means by which to provide the same service at less cost. And there's a real benefit to having fewer people on the payroll when you're dealing with pension and health care benefits.
I'll get to the other 2 points when we come back from the break, but I want to stay on this for 1 second, because many people have said we have to get rid of the pension program altogether. We have to go to a 401k. Do you support that?
I do support that, especially with regard to new hires. I believe this, and I campaigned on this as a gubernatorial candidate. If you've got less than 10 years in the system, we're going to make a switch, because you still have plenty of time to plan for your retirement. You have more than 10 years in the system, we'll honor the promises with a few other tweaks. But if you have less than 10 years in the system, or you're a new hire, we need to do something different. We can no longer afford to define the benefit. That's where a 401k is different.
The second thing you talked about was the business climate in New Jersey, and you run a business. I want to talk to you when we come back from the break about how the business climate in New Jersey personally affected your business, and then we can expand that, and talk about all businesses in New Jersey when we continue our conversation with kind of candidate for governor Jack Ciattarelli when Jersey Matters continues.